Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Josh and Jason Monday Christian and Conspiracy Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Monday. If you don't know me, I'm a Christian rapper, devoted husband, father, and Army veteran. Jason will not be with me tonight, but that's okay because I have Mount Crushmore Gary Wayne here, so I'm going to be perfectly fine. Here's his book, The Genesis 6 Conspiracy, okay? Everybody, I definitely suggest you pick up that copy of this book, and he has a new book that's coming out. And I know everybody, my audience will be super excited for that. Gary, go ahead and introduce yourself, and also tell them about your new book.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me back on, and so much looking forward to the conversation tonight and to talk on topics that will overflow into book two as well. So, yeah, book two is been long awaited. It's been on the advertising mark by Amazon since last October for pre-sale. And it's just the printing is so backlogged, like everything else with COVID. I think it broke most things. And so there's a lack of labor, a lack of paper, and a lack of printers. And so they started actually printing in December. It got
Wow.
into the queue in November, and then and it has to go through, the size of the book has to go through different levels of printing. In other words, they print sections at a time, then they have to bind it together. So first shipment was shipped 3 weeks ago, and retailers got inventory that was sold out. There was another one that went in right behind, another print run going after that. My books are lost, but I'm hoping to have them tracked down and into my hands for early this coming week. So yes, the Genesis 6 Conspiracy Part 2, how understanding prehistory and giants helps to define end time prophecy. And this book is targeted specifically at Christians.
Awesome.
And it is a book that is as unique as book one, but different. So there is no other book on the market out there like this. And, I said I would never write a sequel to the Genesis 6. But what happened is the audience convinced me I ought to do this. And it took me a long time to sort of listen to that. And then, to actually write a book this complicated, it takes a little bit of time to do that. So it was actually finished and sent to the publishers for editing and everything else about a year ago now. So it's been that long in the process.
Wow.
So this book is unique in a lot of different ways. One is, if people are fans of Dr. Heiser, and I can't say I've read his books, but I've heard a lot about him and all the good things and the work that he does. This is Heiser on steroids, and it's Genesis 6 Conspiracy 1 on steroids. And
Nice.
it's specifically targeted to Christians. So if you want to know more about everything the Bible that has to say, I shouldn't say everything, let's say 98% of everything that the Bible has to say about prehistory, from a completely biblical perspective, and taking it back to the original Hebrew and Greek as well, and also etymology of words. This is what that book does. So not only will I list all of the giants that are listed in the Old Testament, I will link them back to patriarchs. In other words, the first giant that's uh, the tribe was eponymously named after. I will cover all of the hybrids and take them back to the giants. If people aren't sure what I'm talking about, that's a tribe that is created from a Rephaim and a human female, or a human male with a female Rephaim. And so if people aren't familiar with that, does that actually happen in the Bible? Yes, it does. And I walk people through it. And the quick example on that, just so that people know what I'm talking about, is in Genesis 36, which is this really odd addendum onto the Table of Nations, because they're talking about giants and there are no giant patriarchs like Arba or Rapha in the Table of Nations in Genesis 10 or First Chronicles. But you have Eliphaz, son of Esau, brother of Jacob, marrying Timnah, daughter of Seir the Horim giant, Rephaim, red-haired, pale-skinned giant, to create a new dynasty of the Amalekites, the hybrids, versus the original Amalekim that they took the name for Amalek after, who show up in the War of Giants hundreds of years before in Genesis 14, and there's also different pockets of the Amalekite giants that I cover also in book 2 as well. And they produce a hybrid set of giants. These are 7 to 9 feet tall, just like the patriarchless Canaanites.
Wow. Wow.
Or
So
have a Rephaim patriarch. So I cover all of that off. I cover off the complete angelic hierarchy. I cover off all of the wars of the giants, Genesis 14, all the conquest wars. And then I transition while highlighting all of these interesting things out of prehistory into setting down a chronology for end time prophecy and using those terms so that people are going to see how prehistory connects into prophecy. And I also put in that transition some of the things I didn't do in book 1, particularly on secret societies, and I'm going to put in the Jesuit order this time because I think I put out enough information now that people can sort of understand the hierarchy, and the thelemic tree, which is the organizational structure of the bloodlines in the secret societies.
wow, man, that all that information right there is just amazing, and it's stuff that people need to know. We need to see how Satan was working, back then and how he's working now, and I think it's very important. Um, I'll go over a few verses before we get into our subject tonight, but everybody, please check out Gary Wayne's Genesis 6 Conspiracy first book. This is a lot to swallow. Believe me, I always like to reference this when I go into secret societies myself. When I start studying those or coming out with an episode, I like to dip in here first to make sure I'm on the right track. So and also his next book, please, guys. I mean, that's just a little taste of what he's talking about. How many authors do you know that are digging this deep? How many authors do you know that hop on shows for free and just go? I mean, he's blasting shows out left and right. So, guys, it's amazing. Please check it out. But I'll go with this one first. It's James 5:12. Okay, it says, "But above all things, my brethren, swear not neither by heaven nor by earth, neither by any other oath, but let your yea be yea and let your nay be nay, lest ye fall into condemnation." Okay, so no oaths. Okay, absolutely no oaths. I did do an oath to join the military. Okay, this is before I'm fully saved. I'm swearing an oath and I'm just repeating it and I'm
Yeah.
not even knowing what's going on. So I am guilty of this as well. I don't like to act like I'm Mr. Perfect. Okay. So I
Yeah.
am guilty of oaths as well. But, this is
Well,
basically,
oaths aren't a sin.
yeah.
We're just told as Christians not to do it. So
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
if you do swear an oath, then you're expected to fulfill that oath,
Okay. Okay.
right?
Thanks for keeping me
Yeah.
posted on that. Yeah.
So, and you will be held accountable for the oath,
Yeah.
whether you fulfilled it or not, or what the oath was to.
Okay. Yeah.
So
See,
that, yeah.
yeah, I fulfilled it. So,
But within the army, I mean, you're swearing allegiance to the country. That's not
yeah,
a sin either. But the problem is, and the reason why we're told over and over and over and over in the Bible not to swear oaths is because
you can't keep
that's
them.
that's the system of this world.
Yeah.
So that and I think you get the oath-based system starting to be implemented and certainly sort of red flagged as an incident that happens before the flood in the time of secret societies and the creation of giants and the Enochian mysticism I talk about in first book, which is the original pantheon, with the oath on Mount Hermon, as the book of Enoch talks about, where they took the oath of Herem anathema. I walk through all of the etymology and connect this back to the Bible in book 2, and it's an oath to carry it out to the end, no matter what the consequences. And this is the oath that they go out and they create the giants with, because they want to destroy the Adamites from the face of the earth and make sure that they're not going to reach the destiny that Jehovah, the Word of God, created the Adamites for in Genesis 2. So this is the system that comes down into the religious pantheons where they swear oaths in the degrees, and as they become an adept level, you swear an oath to the specific chief god of the pantheon, as well as to other gods, and you might even swear oaths as a giant or of the bloodlines to a specific celestial mafia godfather. that started your tribe and bloodline, and also the kings and the queens, just as King Charles swore an oath to a specific God that provides his divine right to rule from Mount Hermon, from the Baalim council after the flood. It would have been El and the parent gods before the flood, but this is after the flood with King Charles, obviously. So that's the oath-based system that comes down through our whole world. It's the legal system. It's
Yeah.
because Satan is the prince and the god of this world, and they've instituted this whole system. So that's why they created, King James Version of the Bible, so they can have people swear oaths in the courts. They have you swear oaths in almost everything as a reflection of the legal hold that they have. And once they get you to an oath, they know that God expects you to uphold that oath or be held responsible. So it doesn't mean that
So
God
interesting.
can't free us from these oaths.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
best example of that is Moses, because Moses gets adopted into the Rephaim beast dynasty at that time, raised as a son of Pharaoh,
Yeah.
educated in the mysteries and polytheism at Heliopolis, becomes an adept before adulthood, as all bloodline families and members are. And then after he gets ostracized, he finds God, and God has done all of this obviously to prepare him for what he has to do to go back into Egypt for recognition, talk the language, the whole politics sort of end of it, as well as doing the hard stuff of, convincing Israel to follow him into the desert. uh,
Yeah, exactly.
um,
Yeah.
but when Moses dies, who's there to claim the body?
Satan.
Satan
Yeah.
is.
Oh,
And
yeah.
God sends
That's so
Michael to
interesting.
intervene.
Yeah.
Satan had legal right
Over his
over the body,
body.
which is why he's there. But God sent Michael to trump that, because
Wow.
that was part of what he wanted Moses to go through in preparation for the Great Commission that he ultimately fulfilled.
Wow, dude. That is so interesting. All I have to do is mention one verse and I get all this knowledge just dropped on my lap. That was amazing. So, all right, so this this episode, I'm gonna learn my lesson next time. This episode is gonna be on Trilateral Commission, CFR, Club of Rome, these think tanks, guys. Okay. I
Yeah.
just wanted to have Gary come out and kind of explain these because you see these pyramids. I know you like to do the tree. You see these pyramids, and within the pyramid, you always see this little block that says
Yeah.
Trilateral Commission, CFR, Council on Foreign Relations, and Club of Rome. They're always like kind of in this little block. And
Yeah.
I would like you to kind of go over those, and then I have some questions, and whatever. I know that you know your stuff, so you just go over it and just crush it,
Yeah.
and I'll do my best to keep up.
Yeah. So the CFR is the Council on Foreign Relations, and people have heard of that
It's
group.
no conspiracy that these things exist, guys. Just
Yeah.
letting you guys know they all exist 100%.
So, um, but who are they, and what do they do?
That's the
So
main thing, yeah.
it is one of the lower levels of branch organizations, but above adept level. So on the Thelemic tree, Freemasonry, Illuminati, Rosicrucians, Committee of 300, Council of 33, 13 families. So Freemasonry is at the bottom. And typically they're going to be drawing for the CFR is through, and CFR is a U.S. organization as opposed to the Council on Foreign Relations, which would be the British format that was created at the same time and is essentially associated with the Bilderbergers as well, as you sort of link in, and the Bilderbergers as a more senior level on a global scale. So Skull and Bones is a organization that most people might be aware of, like Gore was Skull and Bones, Bush is Skull and Bones. It's at the Ivy League universities to put these pseudo blue bloods into the mysteries and prepare them. And the Skull and Bones is basically a stepping stone to the CFR, to the Council of Foreign Relations. And So the Skull and Bones is kind of a bloodline of the Illuminati. So they're higher than the lower levels of the Freemasons, but they're not purebloods.
Mm.
Um, but they do work with a senior branch of the CFR. So it's not unusual in secret societies that you would have a senior level and a junior level. So if I could explain that in terms of like the original one that I could find in modern times, it was the Templars were the junior order that were fully established, even though they're founded in 1099. They were officially established in 1118 with the crowning of Baldwin II on a small priory on the Rock of Zion. And Huda Payan then becomes the Grand Master going forward there as a splitting away of the senior from the junior, and the Priory of Sion would be the senior order of purebloods.
I see. Yeah.
Right? So that's kind of how these organizations kind of work. So even the Bilderbergers have a senior order
Mm.
and a junior order. The Club of Rome has the same sort of format. So when we look at the seniors, they would be royales like the Windsors or families from the Bilderberg, so the Dutch families, the Bourbon family, some of the black nobility families, and of course the black nobility of Italy. So as the people who are being educated in these Ivy, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm still
Yeah.
here. Can
Yeah, it said that host you had muted me, so
yeah, something happened right there. I am so sorry.
that's
That's my
okay.
fault.
I just
You were on
wasn't
fire right there too.
I wasn't sure
I didn't mean to
whether
mute you. Definitely. Sorry about that, guys.
that's
Everybody
okay.
that's listening, I
Yeah.
apologize.
And
Okay.
so yeah, so if I can pick up my train of thought, so the
I'm so
Ivy
sorry. Yeah.
Leagues are bringing in these young people and giving them direct sort of entry levels into these think tank and political organizations that are going to set the international policy of the US for the world. They're going to be working on that continuously. And the CFR is also the doorway through if you wanted to get to the trilateral organization. And so you would have all of these subgroups, and typically the CFR has 2,670 members. And it's limited. And so there's new ones coming in and cycling all the way through. And then you also have, like I say, the representative of the bloodlines, which is the senior order. And one of the ways that you can sort of connect this organizational structure and this legacy is that the insignia of the Skull and Bones of the Illuminati, people supplying for the CFR, their insignia is the Skull and Bones or the Templar flag
Hmm.
or the pirate
Interesting.
flag. It's all one of the same thing. And so you have in the original sort of founding of this is a mixing of European elite that includes the Bavarian elite, just as the Illuminati is connected in there as well. And then you have junior black nobility as well operating at the top level. And these are the ones, like the Medici family, for example, Venice, Florence, ones that came over from the Middle East in about 1000 AD, and we're working at the commercial and banking end of the black nobility versus the senior, in terms of the Italian black nobility, the senior level, which is the plebeian and patrician lines, or the ones that go back through Augustus and Julius Caesar, back to the senators, back to Romulus and Remus, and back to the gods that produced Romulus and Remus.
Hmm.
And that would be called the Julia gens of that bloodline. So when we're talking about these bloodlines, they all sort of kind of intermix. And so the upper order has about 500 to 600 members only. that is associating with it. And again, only 15 more might be moving in and out per year at the top level. And these are the world's senior sort of elite. So they're going and intersecting sort of back up. And so the CFR, you would be seeing them going into not only the Illuminati as one of those organizations, but through the senior order, through the Committee of 300, as they would sort of double intersect in terms of the branches on that. So, but it's only because you have the royal bloodlines that are participating with the lower level adepts.
Yeah, so I love how you go through all that. Like most people, I've never even heard like about the senior, junior level. The way
Yeah.
that you broke that down is so interesting. For example, guys, like he was talking about George Bush, like George Bush Senior. When he was in high school, he was in the Skull and Wreath Secret Society at Phillips Academy, right? So he comes out of that, right? And then he goes into Baylor University. He joins the Nas Brotherhood, right? So that's another secret society. Then he goes to Yale and he joins the Skull and Bones, and then he comes out. And and you could check his resume, George Bush
Yeah.
Sr., and you could see, you probably have a lot more information on this. You even have it in
Yeah.
your book.
Yeah.
But what he's saying is all these people that get tapped for these secret societies, in all these different colleges. I mean, if you look up college secret societies, you'll see them all over the different schools. Okay, not just Skull and Bones, but there's all these ones. So they're all getting tapped and then brought into the Skull and Bones and all these different secret societies in college, and then they're getting prepared, is what he's saying, for these upper level positions.
Yeah. And not only would they be participating in influencing politics as advisors, but as you say, they're running think tanks, and there's just a leviathan or web of think tanks that they're all involved that is driving this whole um, echo chamber to get things moving in the right direction. So the CFR is a more recent um, society that was set up, and it was through President Wilson on the U.S. side, and the CFR came about in 1920, 1921, depending on how you want to um, look at that. And they also started to publish their own newspaper with this, and still is around today in a little bit different format. And it's the Foreign Affairs newspaper. It's the establishment policy for the elites. Like it's like
Wow.
when they're connected, just to understand the level of connections that they have. So, and the reason why it's important to connect Wilson in is because he's a progressive.
Yeah.
And people think progressive is something new. Progressive was the Western branch of National Socialism.
Yeah.
And it's the same policies, the same belief system. And he had set up this League of Nations, just as after World War II, you get the United Nations. And they're trying to do, even back then with these organizations, they think they're very, very close to the end time, that they can actually bring about this universal religion and world government. And that's what they're directing. This is a globalist ideological organization, just as the trilateral organization was designed to get the three major Western powers involved in Japan, Europe, and the US at the time in the 70s when it was created, to somehow speed up the globalization movement, because the polytheists are absolutely frustrated that they can't get it done, and they've been frustrated for over 100 years. They've been thinking that they're that close. So if we look at the Council of Foreign Relations in Britain, they were working through the Commonwealth in the same way. And obviously, if you go back before World War II, I mean, they were the power, right? You had a transition going on that World War II established US as the major world power. But before that, it was the Commonwealth. And so it was very important to have that. And the Bilderbergers at the senior level, which are working in the bloodlines in Europe, but also the bloodlines around the world and the secret societies around the world, they're working that sort of aspect. So they're like the continental senior order of bloodlines. And always look at how the Europeans look at the U.S. The U.S. are the attack dogs.
Yeah.
The U.S. are used to drive their agenda. They don't care about your wealth. They don't care about your lives. You're the ones that, the U.S. is the ones that are told to belly up, spend the money, fight the wars,
As
and
we notice, yeah, we notice that
yes, and
happens.
they
Yeah,
sit on the sidelines.
we're
And
like the
so,
we're like the military branch of like the we would say like the Illuminati, basically, right? And
yeah,
then the city of
yeah,
London would be like
yeah.
the Commonwealth, not
Well,
not London, but the city of London, right? The bankers. Well, you would
yeah.
tell me. I don't want to say
Well,
because
no, no,
I'm
you're
London.
you're absolutely bang on. You keep continuing.
And then the Vatican is the religious part, right? So
Yeah,
they're it's just we got to see. And then what do you see in each of these places? In Washington D.C., you see a giant phallus, right? It's the
yes,
Washington Monument. You see a giant phallus in Rome. You see a giant phallus in the city of London. It's
yep,
all over. So
yep. They mark their legalities and their rule in plain sight. And it's important to know that Washington City was created and was created as a Masonic city,
yeah,
and it's absolutely loaded with sacred geometry, celestial alignments, and polytheist worship of their pantheon. So it's important to sort of understand how the world works. And the US was created, and I cover this in book one, was as the Templar dream to bring about the world government. And it was going to be a model of how it would look, where you had independent states working with one strong central federal government. Um, and it was going to be the leverage to be able to move the world in that direction. So they were very well ahead of their time with their plans. And that should absolutely open up people's eyes to know that this is not just a transgenerational.
yeah. You got to
Um,
see you got to see
this
the
is
stuff that's
this
hidden
has
too.
been going on for thousands of years. In the last 1,000 years, they've been plotting this whole plan, this whole march to world government.
Yeah, people have to see, man. It's like I had family members from my wife's side go to Washington D.C. They're from the Philippines. They have no idea. They came over to visit me, and they're like, "We just came from Washington D.C. The Washington Monument was beautiful. Check these pictures out." And my wife was looking at me like, "Don't even get into it." I'm like, I gotta say, let me tell you guys about the Washington Monument real quick. It's 6,666 inches tall. It's 66.6 inches, wide, and it's just
Yep,
I just had to go tell them the Bible's actually down here, and I just when you start once you are aware of this type of stuff, I opened up a can of worms to them, but once they found that out and they see that, and
yep,
then they could Google it and even look it up, they
yep,
they see it in a whole different light. And we always thought it was just Protestant Christians coming over here. That's
yep,
that's what everybody tried to make it
yep,
seem, but really they're worshiping a whole different God, as you could tell.
yeah. So, and in their founding doctrines of the CFR, here's the paraphrase of why they were created. Goal was to bring down borders, open borders. That's so you see what the progressives continue to do. Progressives then, progressives now, establish world government and funds leadership of global groups and societies. So it is like a stream of money coming down through the royales through these, and these royales have more money than people think. Um, there was there's something that's called on the books money and off the books money.
Everywhere is like that,
Yeah, and so
huh?
people think that people like uh, Bezos or Musk or Gates are the richest people in the world. Small potatoes.
Yeah, yeah,
And so much so that if the Davos crew, which also answers into the Committee of 300 in the Thelemic Tree, um, were to be able to pull off the Great Reset, these oligarchs, these pseudo blue bloods are trying to intermarry uh, with through their children and generations to move up in the bloodlines. That's the price that they pay for going to these meetings, like the Bilderbergers meetings and things like that. Um, in the Great Reset, they too would lose all their money,
Yeah.
but they would be funded by the bloodlines and they would run the world after that. So they would make it back very, very quickly. Now, when I was doing research when I was writing book one, and I wanted to have an idea what is this off the books money, and you start to learn about Switzerland and the banking, and that's another rabbit hole in itself.
We've
But
gone over it a little bit on our show. Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
I at that time was told by several sources, and the numbers would be somewhere between 300 and 500 trillion back in about the year 2000
Wow.
was the off the books money
Wow. That's
that they
crazy.
held. So that would be 10 times more, maybe even more. I don't know, because they don't lose money on the markets because they don't, A, they don't have to be in the markets, but B, they get out before anything
Well,
happens.
they know exact, and they can create a problem to make the market go up or down, like
Yeah.
like maybe making something like a vaccine. I don't know, but so also something in a smaller window, like you see the Crown Estate, which is
Yeah.
they own 6 billion acres of land. It's like it's worth like
Yeah.
$30 trillion. That's just an example
Yeah.
of on the books money that might not be the Windsors for sure, but
Yeah.
it is something that is we can actually look into. So that's 30 trillion right there. So that's big money, but we never hear about this. When do you
Yeah.
ever
They don't.
hear that the the Windsors own the Crown Estate, or that the City of London owns the Crown Estate? We never hear about that unless you dig,
Well,
dig, and dig.
and they are the crown.
Yeah,
So it doesn't, you can parse it off while the government owns it or
that's
this.
what they try to do. Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's
But they're the crown.
yes,
They have
so they own
legal,
it. Yeah,
they own it. And,
yeah.
and still, even if you add all of that in, you still don't see the wealth that they're hiding in Switzerland, which is why they created that location.
And they made it so there's neutral money, so everybody that it has that type of
Yep.
stuff, they could put their money there, and then no one's gonna know. The
Yeah.
Vatican was doing that as well. The making deals. They have a
So,
Vatican
yeah,
bank as well. Swiss, and isn't Swiss? Doesn't the Swiss actually guard the Vatican bank? The
sure it
Swiss
does. So,
military? Yeah,
yeah, and in book two, I'm going to cover off the Swiss banking and I'm going to cover off the Jesuits and how the Jesuit banking moved to Switzerland
yeah,
through the royal bloodlines and secret societies. And even the Rothschilds, which was the banking set up outside the church, they moved their head offices and wealth to Switzerland as well. And most of the Templar wealth that was in France at the time of the fall of the Templars went to Switzerland under
wow,
the protection of a sister organization called the Knights of St. John or the
yeah.
Hospitalators.
We
With
had a show on that with you
yeah,
too, and that was
we did.
amazing,
Yeah,
man. I
and
love
with
that.
the White Cross, which
Yeah,
is the Swiss flag,
yeah,
you know, sort of manifested, and that banking there started at that time because the Hospitalators actually started up there about 100 years previous to the fall of the Templars. And what's interesting about the story in terms of how the secret societies and the bloodlines get control of the Vatican banking is it begins with an order called the Montesa Order by who is at the time of the creation of the Jesuits, run by Francis Borgia, one of the black nobility bloodline popes, and a Basque, and he is going to become the third Grand Master of the Jesuits in 1565, and by 1571, between him working with the Bourbon bloodline, have got control of the banking, and they
jeez,
move it to Switzerland.
yeah. Man, see, you guys see how it all folds down. So this is the stuff that people don't get to know about, don't get to hear about. So yeah, these are such deep stuff, man. Like a lot of people concentrate so much on the president of the United
Yeah,
States or something like that being
yeah,
powerful, and look at the stuff that's going on behind the
yeah.
scenes.
And then what the CFR did in the 70s, we talked about him, is they actually were the ones who organized the creation of the Trilateral Organization.
Yeah, which is the Rockefeller. One of the Rockefellers was one of the was part of that as well, right?
Yes, and
Yeah,
the Rockefellers fund significant amount of money into most of these groups as well, as
yeah,
part of the stable of agents of the Rothschilds.
yeah. Man, crazy. So, for example, like Ronald Reagan, for example, this is just like grabbing a random president. It says that he had 28 CFR members in his
Yeah,
administration, 10 Bilderbergs, and 10 Trilateral Commission members out of the 59. Okay.
yeah,
So you just see that. Like, and then, Clinton, for example, Clinton and Richard Nixon had over 100 CFR members in their cabinets through their
yeah,
whole
yeah.
presidency. So they're just
It's
picking these people, and
it's the that's why they call it the uniparty now. I mean, people are finally starting to wake up that um, they control both parties and they control the policies.
yeah,
And so it's always moving in that progressive um, movement. And when the Republican establishment comes to power, they're never pulling anything back that the progressives ever put in place. Things move at a little bit slower pace, and you get this sort of, okay, well, we got some breathing room there. Maybe we can get some changes. And then it's like, Lucy and the football and Charlie Brown, it gets tugged away. And guess what? The radical leftists are back in power and they're back moving the goalposts again. So it's also one of the things when you think about how populist politicians have always been thought of as evil and should not be permitted. And it's anti-democracy is the disinformation that they put out on it. And it makes absolutely no sense. Populism is the absolutely essential core of democracy. But
yeah,
because they can't control the grassroots of populism, they have to stamp it out. So if you wonder why the whole world rose up against Trump, because he was operating out, even though he may have come out of
yeah,
progressives,
yeah,
he may have even come out of the bloodlines, but he was not permitted to run for president
yeah,
for the Democrats, so he chose the Republicans, and I think his policies have been quite good actually for the most part. But understand that when he went that way and decided he was going to turn the Republican Party upside down and inside out and replace it with his populist movement, that's something the left-wing fascist hegemony cannot let happen.
yeah. That's why everything. Yeah, that makes sense. That definitely makes sense of why they would do that. But it almost seems like they're but he did do some things that us as conspiracy theorists probably wouldn't agree with. Like
Mm-hmm.
Operation Warp Speed and stuff like that. So there's it's like they're all good. I think they're all part of the team. Even though he was doing stuff that
Yep.
and his stuff is great. You know how it is. He's still
Yeah.
part of the. You're
I
not
mean,
going to be able to get in there if you went to VVC,
yeah. Yeah.
or San
At
Bernardino
least he's
University or
not
something.
persecuting
Yeah.
Christian. At least he's not persecuting Christians and conservatives.
Yes,
And
I agree.
it's not that Trump. And here's the flip side to what you were talking about in terms of agreement on that flip side, is that Trump never said he was against the New World Order.
Yeah,
He said he wanted a larger role for the U.S.
yeah,
And
that's
he
true.
doesn't want to be answerable to the bloodlines who wouldn't let him and fund him to power. They were never going to let him go to Bohemian Grove and get
Yeah,
initiated
yeah,
or and chosen. So they have to stop him. And if you look at what's going on with the geopolitics of Putin today, and I'm no Putin fan by any stretch of the imagination, um, he's basically saying, I'm not against the New World Order. I want a larger role.
yeah,
Xi in China's doing the same thing.
yeah,
So there's this pushback to the European understanding that they're trying to impose on the world. And if we get lucky, maybe the US will be pushing back more after the next set of elections. If not, I think we're on a fast ramp to destruction. But
yeah. I mean, honestly, I think the same thing. You could see it happening, So we'll see, man. And yeah. So if you guys all out there want to, I think a good place to start for me, and this is basically me learning from Gary Wayne, like how to do research. I started just looking at all the high school secret societies at first, and then I went to the college secret societies second. And then you start finding the notable members, and then you start researching each one
yeah,
of those, and then you find out that those people, like for example, you know, um, the Skull and Bones was started by one of the president's dads, right? And then all of a sudden Woodrow Wilson becomes president. So there's just study like that. That's how I did. And then what happens is I started finding out all the notable members that ended up going to these, these 8 notable high schools that are like preparatory
Yeah.
schools. And then that's how I did it. That's how I started doing it. But I'm nothing like Gary, obviously. But it's just that's a way that I kind of started digging into it and finding out that it keeps branching off and branching.
It's always the same pattern. So once you
Yeah,
start to understand the patterns, you start to see how things work, and you can dig deeper. And unfortunately, it is such a large organizational structure at so many different levels. It's just
yeah.
mind-boggling, and you can just be forever researching them.
That's
But
why that's why you could write a book like this thick and then
yeah,
write a second one because there's so much you can dig into.
and
Because
still not cover it
yeah, because it's
all.
my for me it was mind boggling even just looking into the secret societies of high schools and colleges
Yeah.
and finding out what CEOs and these people are like I said, man, I think that presidency and all this stuff is chosen.
Yeah.
2004, Al Gore versus or I'm sorry, this is gonna be George Bush was going against another Skull and Bones member. I have it all in my notes, but I don't have it.
Gore and Bush were both Skull and Bones.
Yeah. So we have that, and it's just you guys just see how it's going, and I just love how you dig deep and how you're able to do the senior, junior, and exposing this type of stuff for us. It's really we need it. We need that Ephesians 5:11. We need to expose evil, right? And don't be in the fruitful of darkness or whatever. So yeah, I just love the way that you do that and to pull it out.
Yep.
So
Yep.
um and then so you have Club of Rome as well. Like I know we kind of went over Trilateral. We
Yep.
kind of went over CFR. So like Club of Rome, like what is up with that one? Did
Well,
you have some information on
again,
Club of
they're
Rome?
they're kind of a more recent organization, created in the late 60s.
Okay.
And they were created again because of this impatience of, you know, World War II had happened. They had wiped out between basically the same war of World War I and World War II. They wiped out the Kaiser bloodline from the Western European bloodline domination. Germany would be central. Habsburgs were reduced to and lost their empire. The Tsars, the Putyanin bloodline, which the Romanovs were a junior offshoot through intermarriage starting in 1600 of the Putyanin bloodline out of Kiev, which was considered too much of a rival and too pure of a bloodline compared to the Western ones that were less ennobled and less pure. And they took them down, just as they took down the Xi and Li bloodlines of the Shah dynasties in China with the same social masonry. So you look
Wow.
at National Socialism, communism, that's all part of the Western secret societies. It's the virus that they created to take down some of their rivals so they could impose their position on the world. So you think, after World War II, they're almost going to get a free run, but it doesn't work that way. So they start coming up with new organizations like the Trilateral in the 70s that I talked about, and then Club of Rome preceded them, and they're um, an organization that is one step higher than the Bilderbergers, um, and from a different branch. So higher up of the branch as it goes into the trunk organization, one step higher. So the Bilderbergers are all royal bloodlines, right? So this is significant. But again, they have a senior order and a junior order to it. So when I was growing up, um, and I was born in 1958, so we had a prime minister come to power in 1968, and about the time of the creation of the Club of Rome. And he comes from a first line family in Canada from the original settlers of France to New France or Quebec. Um, and he is a bachelor at that time.
Hmm.
And I'm going to come back to that in a second. And so he has been a communist starting in the 30s, maybe a little bit earlier, right out of college. He says he never um, he says he moved more to the center and he joined the Liberal Party. But he always ran as an extreme left-wing candidate and has best friends with Castro,
Wow.
family friends with the Aga Khan, even to this day. Trudeau spends vacations with the Aga Khan on his island, and that's the leader of Sufism, which is the mystical part of Islam.
Wow.
Um, and they were showing on the CBC on the national news. I saw it twice when I was young, and I was only, if it was, say, 1969 or 70 when he was going in, I'd be 11 or 12 years old. And they were showing him going into the Club of Rome meetings, but
Wow.
he's not high up. So he's part of the lower end, and he may be lower level of bloodlines, and he would have been some sort of adept or new money and rising through the lower levels. Um, and so there's a veracity to, for me, in terms of this organization that I was remember seeing it and thought, well, that's really odd. Why is our prime minister going into a Club of Rome meeting?
Yeah.
Like, what's that all about? Of course, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Um, so when we look at this group, it has less than 100 members. So it's a very specific group, and they were created to speed up this process again.
Yeah.
That's the frustration level. And so they claim to hold the keys to peace and prosperity.
Mm.
That comes obviously through world government and their belief system that they want to impose, which is polytheism, and that they created things like, people might be aware of some of these things like peak oil. That was their scare. Of course, it was never any such thing as peak oil because there's lots more oil out there. Overpopulation,
Yep. A lot of them do
that's
that.
from them. Global warming is theirs.
Oh, wow.
It's all made
Thank
up.
you. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I know. Thanks a lot. Now I know which one to blame for that. That's hilarious. Club of Rome, huh? So,
Yeah.
um,
And so the upper order that they report to is guiding them. So they come into these meetings and then they go out with their marching orders from the lower end. So you're going to have with the Club of Rome, which is going to have an intersection with the black nobility because it's located in Rome. And if this is the senior order of the black nobility that is sponsoring a lot at the level. So the Club of Rome would answer in at the lower level into the Rosicrucians, which the Rosicrucians are 50% pure blood, but of course the senior order is going right up to the Council of 33, and you could say that's going to include some of the 13 families, fine, um, but technically through the organizational structure, it's the Council of 33 for the senior level.
mm,
Now, one of the things that they did was they divided the world up into 10 groups of empires, similar to the one that the UN did, but slightly different. And those are the 10 zones that they want to have 10 leaders running. This is the new Atlantis that Francis Bacon, a Rosicrucian, one of the, I guess, first sort of groups of academics in about 100-year period or so, was you have the Invisible 33, which were the Rosicrucians. They create the 300 families below that, and then the Rosicrucians below that. And that's where you see the elite, whether or not it is Da Vinci or people like that are going to be the grand masters of the prior FC on. That's a separation from the royals, from, let's say, somebody like with the name of Sinclair or something like that. Oh, and I forgot to mention, Pierre Trudeau, shortly thereafter, these meetings and stuff, he marries Margaret Sinclair of the
mm.
Sinclair bloodline out of Scotland, who created
Wow.
Freemasonry.
Wow. Yeah, I remember you
That's
actually
how
went over that
they
on our show
that's
too.
how they move forward. And so Trudeau today is a bloodline of the Sinclairs, which is the St. Clairs out of France, which is the Rollo bloodline that expropriated Normandy. And the treaty in 910 to 912 to give the land to the Norse bloodlines, to the Rollo bloodlines, was called the Treaty of St. Clair, where they adopted their name from.
Wow. And I wanted to make a correction when I was talking about Skull and Bones. So it was actually it was Alfonso Taft helped create the Skull and Bones, and then all of a sudden his son is William
Yep.
Howard Taft. So
Yep.
he was a Yale
President.
Skull
Yep.
and Bones member, and then he became president. Then he became chief of staff. I just wanted to let you guys know that because I made a mistake. I said Woodrow Wilson probably because it just came out like, yeah. So man, just interesting. So and then the two
So,
people that went against each other too. I want to make a correction too. Is
yep.
it was George Bush versus John Kerry. George Bush was class of '68, and then John Kerry was class of '66.
Yeah.
Skull and Bones members both going
Yeah.
against each other for
Yeah.
presidency.
And we wonder why we had perpetual war.
Yeah,
That's the uniparty. That's another
yeah,
sign of the globalists, because that's how they get to a world government. So, and these 10 regional governments is based on the Atlantean Empire before the flood, where Poseidon, fallen angel, God, marries, climbing, creates 10 demigod Nephilim kings. That is the golden age in the center of knowledge, technology, religion, arts, and is trying to conquer the world to create this Nephilim world order under one uh, dynasty before the flood, which is one of the reasons why the flood comes and sort of starts get you to thinking about there's more to the violence than just violence. This is they had the technology to destroy the world with the violence and the wars that they were doing, and they would have done it because that's what they were created to do. And so Francis Bacon's new Atlantis is this uh, end time world where you have a universal government, you have a universal religion, and you have science that works in harmony with religion, because mysticism is created from the seven sacred sciences and the illicit knowledge given from the fallen angels. It's a knowledge cult. And so Atlantis as 10 is very, very significant that they want to create the days of Noah again, when the gods walked amongst us and giants walked amongst us. And the days of Noah included 350 years after the flood, when the Rephaim were created, where again the Baalim, for example, walked amongst us, created the Rephaim, as I talk about in book 2, and show you how they created the Rephaim. And that's the world they want to bring about in this new Atlantis. And biblically, Daniel 2 talks about these 10 toes, which are 10 kings of the seventh beast empire.
yeah. I was going to
Yeah.
ask you about that actually.
Yeah. And Daniel 7 adds in the 10 horns. And just as Revelation 12, Revelation 13, and Revelation 17 has the same 10 horns of this seventh empire, noting that Assyria and Egypt, in one of the prophetic allegories, would be the two older beast empires. And you can also use Daniel 8, which just adds more information and gives you the seven empires, only starting with Greece before that split up, Rome, which comes after and which was part of the Greek Empire, and then the end time empire. So it's yet up to the same number either way, and using both prophecies gives you more information for the end time.
Do you think they're trying to set up the end times to happen? Is that why they do this? Like,
Yes,
or is God just
yes.
using them as chess pieces? What do you think?
They want to bring about the end time before the ordained time. They
Yeah.
want the showdown with God. So the spurious were created as in illegitimate, outside of ordained marriage children, spurious, and obviously from the celestial mafia godfathers and human females. Um, they were created to, as I mentioned earlier, to wipe um, the Adamites from the face of the earth. And they believe, because they believe in the gods that they follow, that they can win this war.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It, yeah, it's crazy. And even more so, they're created to do the things that the fallen angels don't want to get blood on their hands on. So you do not hear biblically or anywhere else that I'm aware of where you have the gods or the fallen angels slandering the God Most High or the Word or the Holy Spirit, or sinning, talking in a blasphemous way, because they know the power of the omnipotent. So they use their spurious offspring, the giants and the descendants of the giants, the whole nobility elite throughout our history,
Yeah.
to slander God and to do their will and to enslave humankind and to cause perpetual war. And they also use their spurious offspring to bring about this great sort of end time war that they believe that they can win. The problem is the fallen angels want to destroy the earth, and they want to win a settlement with God to have the earth as their realm and then to renew the earth later. So if you understand the doctrine of Shiva, who's a destroyer god out of the Hindu pantheon and as associated with the technology and everything that's going on at CERN, that is a destroyer god that is also a creator god. And it creates a new world, or renews the world out of the ashes and the destruction of the old world. They don't want a world for Adamites. They only want a world where they can create oikotarians, or dwelling places for the spirit, for their spirits offspring, or disembodied spirits.
Mm.
And it'll be a whole different world that spirit is going to be put into a body in whatever world that they're going to create for it. So
That is so
this is
interesting, man.
also the same doctrine as, sorry to keep ranting on about this, but I
No,
wanted to just
hey,
link into one more about the secret societies,
dude, keep going, bro. This is
doing
amazing
the
stuff. You,
religious and the secret societies, because they're the same organization. The secret societies come out of the mystery schools that were educated for the elite in prehistory, and in the theology or the philosophy, the love of Sophia, the goddess of Gnosticism and wisdom, created the secret societies through the initiatory organizations and the mystery schools, which is why you have all of those initiatory schools that your organization and schools that you were talking about earlier. So the same analogy for coming out of the secret societies is the phoenix coming out of the ashes. So they want to bring about this end time, but before the ordained time, to try and slander and slur God. So they're always working through their offspring, which are the visible ones on the earth who run this earth, just as the invisible ones operate from the council of the gods. And they want to bring this end time about before the ordained time. And that's why they're so impatient, because they know the time is running short and they got to get it done. So they keep doubling down and doubling down. And that's why they're the perpetual war party of politics. They've been perpetual war throughout their whole creation.
yeah.
Giants were warriors. They fought between each other. They wiped out humans. They've done this throughout our history, and they've used us as their pawns.
Yeah, and we could. That's why everybody. That's why you could see so much evil, and that's why you see so much evil within just the governments and everything that we're talking about. We see the evil happening, but no one can ever put their finger on it, and no one can really do that unless you break it down to a spiritual level, like Gary's doing right now, taking the conspiracy and showing how it relates to the Bible in the purest way. And it's just amazing when you get into this stuff, man. It's just it rattles my mind. But that's interesting. So is that why God creates a new heaven, new earth, and He's just like, just a new heaven, new earth comes down and just crushes this one, or what? What do you think?
Yeah, we have to go through the millennium first, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And that's kind of a humbling thing for humanity, I think. So just as fallen angels were already created immortal and knew God intimately and knew
yeah,
how powerful He was, they still rebelled.
yeah,
So after Armageddon, Jesus is going to set up His kingdom and reign for 1,000 years, and Satan's going to be locked in the pit prison. Then after 1,000 years, he's going to come out, and people are going to rebel again. So it's there. I think it's closing off all aspects that, yes, we've been selected to be the resolution to the angelic rebellion, but understand if we don't have the laws of God written on our hearts, so to speak, as the Bible talks about, um, we're going to do same things as what the fallen angels did. And so when after you have the judgment and all the names that were written in the book of life from before creation had a chance to leave their name in that book or have it blotted out, that is the numbers that are going to go forwards into eternity as the inheritors of eternity, to be with also the loyal angels. Um, and so there's going to be something new that's created after that. We don't know what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a physical world. It's a different dimension, that heaven, but God is going to be with us in the new
Yeah.
heavens and the new earth.
No
And just
sun.
at,
Yeah,
yeah,
no sun because the lamb is so bright, it'll light up. And
it,
read
it,
that, guys.
it,
Revelation
it,
22. Read it.
it is the permanence that comes in versus the non-permanent that was designed to have angels and humans and hybrids have free choice to be part of what's coming or not. So it's going to be something we don't understand, something completely unique. But I mean, he created everything from nothing. So, I mean, how powerful is that? He knew the
Yeah.
beginning from the end. How
Yes.
powerful is that?
It's almost like he's creating the Garden of Eden again and making it so that everything is kind of back to those same rules, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is amazing. Well, Gary, I think you did an amazing job. It's almost 10:30. I don't want to keep you for too long. I think did you touch on everything you wanted to touch on as far as on the ones we are going to go over tonight? Did you have some more notes you wanted to bring? I think you were like honestly like so much knowledge right now that you laid out. It was amazing. Did
Well,
you?
the Bilderbergers are one that sort of links in here as well,
Okay,
right?
yeah. If you want to go over that, no
Yeah,
problem.
just
Got another
let's
10 or
spend a
15
little
minutes.
bit of time on them. And again, you have a junior order and a senior order. So you have the Royals that we've talked about. Um, and I won't go through all the different family names. And then you have the new money that are called in once a year to the Bilderberger meeting, right? And it's a secret, and there's a specific agenda. And so the new money, those who want to intermarry into the bloodlines and have their children intermarry into the bloodlines like Pierre Trudeau did, um, they are brought in and then they're given their marching orders for the next year. It's like the Davos crew as well. Also, these, which links into the Committee of 300, they invite the people there and then they get their marching orders for the year, right? They're all working on the same sort of long-term agenda. And this was created in 1954. And so you had the royal family and Prince Bernard and Juliana and Victor Rothschild, who are the ones that are saying we need to create this CFR for the world, right? And it's the senior order. So um, they were brought together and they're the most powerful figures in the world. So it's more than just European bloodlines that are working here. Now the organization isn't funded by the bloodlines, it's funded by pseudo blue bloodlines, the Rockefellers and the Ford Foundation. So all of these foundations that are set up, um, they funnel their money. It's like laundering it, and they're all tax free to fund the globalist agenda.
Wow.
I mean, everything is fixed for their causes, and so the Bilderbergers are the senior part of the CFR. So they have both under their wings, right? Um, and so they're a very, very powerful organization. And again, their agenda is to bring about world government.
Hmm. Well, awesome. I'm glad you went over that because yeah, we need to definitely hear about that because the Bilderbergs is it's so secretive. It's very hard for someone like me that's not as experienced as yourself
Yeah,
at researching
yeah,
to find this type of
yeah.
stuff out.
So when you hear that the Bilderbergers were also um, founders of the Trilateral Organization understand that the Bilderberger families are part of that senior order of the CFR as well. So you have the lower order and the higher order working together. And then from the lower CFR order, you have people funneling into the Trilateral Organization as they get rewarded.
Yeah. Is there any other think tanks that you could think of besides the ones that we went over?
Anything that's a think tank
Yeah,
is
are
funded by
involved in
secret
this.
societies. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for that presentation. Guys, like I said, everything is going over. This is all well researched, well sourced information. And like I said, if you want to start on a lower level, you could just start, like I said, like I did, high schools, then colleges, and then you could start digging into Trilateral Commission and CFR, Bilderberg, and then just start finding out the lower
Yeah.
levels and then working
Yeah.
your way up. Do you have any
Yeah.
any advice for us?
Yeah.
Gary,
So
like when we're researching this stuff?
yeah, don't get trapped into the old models. That's one of the things because they just can't. They're not designed to um, fit everything that we know. So, like the classic secret society organizational structure is a pyramid, but you can't build a pyramid that fits
All
everything
these
in
in.
and where and how they fit in. So that's why in book two, I cover the thelemic tree. I tell you where the ideas come from and how it all works with those branch organizations and give people a better idea. So everybody thinks differently on the secret societies. And so some people say the Freemasons are the highest. Some people say it's the Rosicrucians. Some people say it's the Illuminati. Some people say it's the Jesuits. Some people say it's the Kabbalist. Um,
Yeah, I know. I've heard that
it's the
before.
cabal, right? They're all part of the mix. But if you don't understand the bloodlines, you don't understand that the royal bloodlines created all of these organizations,
Yeah,
and it's their organizations. So they also have royal organizations as well. So you have the Order of the Garter, for example, that King Charles would be head of.
yeah,
And there are two orders there, Royal Blood Order and a lower level one. So you hear about the Royal Garter, giving awards and bringing people in like former prime ministers of England and that, but they're not part of the senior order. That's the lower order. And that Queen Elizabeth, and by inheritance, Prince Charles would sit at the chair of the Order of the Golden Fleece, headed by King Philippe of Spain,
yeah,
Bourbon, who has
yeah,
the current King of Jerusalem title. And Golden Fleece, if people aren't familiar with that, it's usually symbolized by this lamb on this neck chain as one of the symbols. But the Golden Fleece comes out of Greek mythology as the threads spun from gold. That was the clothing for the gods and the demigods that would help their bodies not decay.
wow, wow,
Yeah. And so you have the Anjou royal bloodlines. And they probably have in each of those higher level ones, because I think the Windsors or the Hanover bloodline would be a very, very senior bloodline. They would have chairs at the table of some of those organizations as well of each other, just as you have the English throne on the Golden Fleece order. The one that stands out the most for people, if you want to make a connection, is the Rollo bloodlines of the Norse, the Sinclairs.
yeah.
Um, that's the Knights of the Seraphim.
That's the one I was going to ask you about because I
Yeah,
remember you told me about that before. Because I was bringing up the Order of Garter, you're like, you need to check out the Knights of the Seraphim. That's another thing that's going to blow people's mind is if you start digging into these branches of the senior levels that he's talking
yeah,
about, it'll blow
yeah.
your mind.
And these are the ancient Masons of the royal bloodlines, and everything's through divine inheritance and where you fit in the hierarchy and the purity of the bloodlines. And they control all of these other lower level societies. It's like, and they're fighting an allegory that was used in on a global scale that was done in the Highlander movies. There can only be one,
They're
right?
all trying to
And
be the best are up there, right?
they're always good. Well, they all want to be the family that is sets up the dynasty of the Antichrist.
Gosh, guys, you see, do you understand that? Do you realize the implications of this stuff is they think they're gonna actually win. It's like it's crazy. But man, thank you so much, Gary. This was and anytime I have you on, it's always such a plethora of knowledge, and it just makes you want to dig more and more. And I really love, I'm really love having you on. I really appreciate you coming on, and you crushed it this time like you always do. I want to try to have you back on. If you have anything you want to go over, like close to when your book is just about to release, or it's coming out pretty soon here, right?
Yeah, it's releasing next week. So
Next week. Okay, so maybe next month or something we'll get together, and that way
sure.
you can just show them the book, and then I can have people
Yep.
order that.
Yep. Yeah. And in the meantime, if people want to go to the website, you can get a generous excerpt of all 84 chapters of book two off that website so people can get a good feel for the book. It's a small drop in the bucket of the information, just like I have a generous excerpt of all 98 chapters of book one. And so just the table of contents of either book ought to grab your attention. And if you're a Christian that wants to learn about what the churches don't teach you, prehistory and prophecy, and learn how that fits into how this world is run and where we're going in prophecy, book two, book two is going to be an eye opener for you. And like I say, in book two, I cover off the Jesuits, which I don't in book one because I thought it was too big of a rabbit trail. The Phalamic tree is in there. I cover off the banking aspect, and I do that in the transition part into end time prophecy because you have to understand how they're transitioning into the ordained times and the key organizations for that.
Yes, and I love it. So, guys, this is Genesis 6 Conspiracy, the first book. Like I said, this is how Gary makes a living. I know he's retired, and this is how he makes a living. He jumps on shows, gives us all this knowledge for free. Please purchase his book. Go to genesis6conspiracy.com. Purchase it right off the website, and then you can also email him any questions you have with the stuff he went over. So, as we always do, we'll end this in prayer. So, Father God, in the name of Jesus, thank you so much for this glorious time. I just want to pray that you protect Gary. I mean, he's releasing stuff in his books that is it's information that obviously these secret societies would hate to have come out. He's doing an amazing job. I know you've been protecting him so far, but just send a legion of angels to protect him. Anybody that's listening, Lord, that needs, that maybe that has a death in the family or needs some type of healing, if you could, help them. I know that recently in my life, some people that I know have had some deaths, and I'm seeing how it affects them. And I just want to pray for all of them. Anybody that's listening that has any problems with any drugs, alcohol, or any type of pornography or anything like that, Lord, please, I just want to ask if you could, help them with discipline and help them to break the chains on all this stuff. So on anything like that, and anybody that's listening also that is, maybe thinking about joining secret societies or in a secret society right now, I just want to ask, Lord, if you could supernaturally help them to just stay in your word and not take these oaths and into these secret societies, Lord. So I appreciate you, Lord, so much for everything you do for us. I love you in Jesus' name, amen. Thank you
Amen.
so much. Anybody that's listening, go to my Instagram, Josh_Monday_podcast, and please follow us and then subscribe to our YouTube. It's going to be Josh Monday Music and Podcast. And then if you want to leave a 5-star review on our Spotify, it's Josh Monday Christian and Conspiracy Podcast in case you're listening on YouTube. Thank you guys so much. And please check out Gary Wayne's stuff. It'll blow your mind. God bless all of you.